Okay, I believe we are streaming.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City of St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee meeting for Friday, March 27th, 2025. The time is now 2:30 p.m. and we have quorum. So I'd like to officially call the meeting to order. Have trouble hearing me, Robert? Let me just check my my audio setting here.
Sorry, it's so very faint.
Is that better?
Thank you, it is.
Okay, thank you. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related with the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. We'll move on to today's agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Sorry, I must have turned off my video there too. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? No, seems to be none. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda? Robert moves in favor. So moves that the designations subcommittee adopt the agenda for this meeting held on Friday, March 27th, 2025. Copies having been previously distributed, that's carries. And now move on to consideration of the minutes from the previous meeting, which is February 17th, 2025. Are there any questions, comments, or changes in regards to those minutes? Don't appear to be any, so if there being none, I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting. Brian moves that the designation subcommittee approve the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, February 17th, 2025. In favor? The motion carries. Are there any declarations of interest other than my own? I have an interest in one of the properties we're talking about today, the St. Paul Crescent property. Does anyone else have a declaration of interest? No? Okay, so we move on to the first item of business, which is an update on the ongoing research for a variety of properties, and Lauren's going to lead us through that.
All right, let me just start this here. Share my screen here. Share. All right, so I've just put together a little presentation like I do for each of these meetings. It's kind of updating everyone on kind of the materials and the research that have been submitted and put together over the past month or so. And I feel like, this month we made a lot of really good progress. We got land use histories, both from Brian and Andrew for a couple of properties. And I've been working with Nishida, on 15 Welland. So I'm just going to go through some of the materials that we've received, and the intended deadline, and going forward, what the next steps are for each of these properties. So for 143, 145, and 147 St. Paul, we have photos documenting these properties, as well as a very wonderful and detailed land use history that Brian put together and that Andrew helped work on. I am going to work on the architectural description and description of local context, and using all of these pieces, have the 906 evaluation prepared for presentation and discussion at the upcoming April meeting. So I think that I think the intent for the April meeting is to have two 906s for discussion, and then some additional research for properties we're continuing to work on as well for that April meeting. The land use history that was submitted was very detailed and really great. It had some really great photos. I'm just going to go through the upper level of highlights. One of the things I also wanted to do at this meeting was kind of get some feedback from the subcommittee on some of those 906 evaluation points, and how people are perceiving the history, the architecture, and the context of these buildings, to kind of help inform my 906 evaluations. So I'm just going to go through just like very high level the histories that were submitted. So this property is 143, 145, and 147 St. Paul, located on lot 16, Block T, Plan 2, within the original 40-acre block of St. Catharines, historically part of Lot 19, Concession 5 in Grantham Township. The land was originally granted to Lieutenant Duncan Murray in the 1780s and was eventually acquired by William Hamilton Merritt in 1820. The property was subdivided by Calvin Brown, St. Catherine's first mayor, who filed City Plan Number 2 in 1872. On December 8, 1877, Brown sold the subject lot to Francis P. Beege. Oh, this is the pronunciation. Is it Beege or? Oh, you know what?
Yeah, this is actually the other
That's
property.
Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
reading from the wrong notes. Let me just adjust to the correct notes for this, for 143. Okay, let's start this over again. Very sorry. So this property is located within former Grantham Township, established on land surveyed by Daniel Hazen in 1887. Or sorry, 1787. Lot 19, Concession 7 was granted to John Hayner, United Empire Loyalist and former Butler's Ranger in 1791, and patented in 1797. The land remained in the Hayner family until it was sold to Thomas Rodman Merritt in the mid-19th century. Merritt was, you are all very familiar with the Merritt family. He's a prominent businessman and son of William Hamilton Merritt, and he subdivided the lot and sold the land in the early 1880s. 143 St. Paul Crescent, which is known as Lot 2169 in City Plan 2 or CP2, is the site of the Neptune Hose Company Fire Hall, which was organized in 1877. And the fire hall was built circa 1881 to 82. The land was formally deeded to Neptune Hose Company in 1921. The building was converted to 2 residential units by the 1920s, and the building was owned by the Crompton family and later Frieden Developments later on in its ownership. For 145, 147, 149, and 153 St. Paul Crescent, these properties were either consist of lot 2170 of City Plan 2 and 2171 of City Plan 2, acquired by a carpenter slash grocer, B.D. Voissard, in 1886. And the structure there was slightly built soon after, remained in the Voissard family until 1945, and then it was acquired by the Crompton family. And the adjacent lot was purchased by Michael McGuire in 1880, likely constructed by him before selling to W.B. Gilland in 1882. This property passed through the Vossard family, Crompton, and Frieden Developments, as it was sold and changed. So these buildings were used as a grocery and residence by the Voissard family in the 1880s to 1920s, and later housed varied commercial tenants. Tenants have included the Piso Medicine Company, grocers, a pharmacy, battery service, karate school, hairstylists, and others. 149 St. Paul Crescent was subdivided into apartments in the 1940s and was used as a rental property. It has a special connection to James. And the exteriors have remained largely unchanged as they evolved. And the buildings are a long-standing and visual and historical landmark in the Western Hill neighborhood. So that's just the history there. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, additions, things that people think are important, need to be said, or discussion points? Okay.
Looks like Robert has his hand up.
Yeah, I have lost my little window that allows me to see everybody. So if you hold on for a second while I find this. Robert, if you have a question, please go ahead and ask.
Yes, the picture in the lower left corner, Mr. Voissard's Western Grocery, that particular picture, was that in the area, or I'm thinking it was at the bottom of the hill, but maybe somebody could elaborate on that.
That's a good question. That was a question that I also
that's the original grocery store. That was at the bottom of the hill there at 1 Hayner Street.
Okay.
And their house was behind on 3 Hayner Street. It's now a vacant lot, yeah. But that was their original grocery store, and it continued to operate even when the larger one opened thereafter. Brian, sorry, you were saying something as well?
Thank you.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I do apologize. I don't know why this isn't being seen. Here we go. Ah, there you guys are. Sorry about that. I can see everyone now. It's very disorienting. All right. So I guess we'll move on to 3 Elizabeth Street, or if there are no more questions or items to discuss. Again, we have a collection of photos from Robert, and then again, land use history primarily from Andrew, and also Brian has contributed to this. And in the same kind of way, I'm going to work on a more detailed architectural description and description of its local context, and bring forth that 906, a draft 906 for us to go through and discuss at the April meeting. Here we go. So here is the front page of the report that Andrew and Brian put together, and then a little. Andrew, how would you pronounce Beggy? Beggy?
I think Beggy.
Beggy?
And I think that only because of the various, there's many different spellings of it, and they all tend to lean towards that pronunciation, but that's speculative on my part.
Beggy. Okay.
Some of the family lived down here in my neighborhood, and they used to call themselves Baggy.
Baggy.
Baggy, yeah.
Okay. Well, I will try on the baggy kind of spectrum. Okay, so this property is located on Lot 16, Block T, Plan 2, from the original 40-acre block of St. Catharines, historically part of Lot 19, Concession 5 in Grantham Township. The land was originally granted to Lieutenant Duncan Murray, and it was eventually acquired by William Hamilton Merritt in the 1820s. This property was subdivided by Calvin Brown, St. Catherine's first mayor, in 1876, who filed City Plan Number 2 in 1872. On December 8, 1877, Brown sold the subject lot to Francis P. Beggy. Baggy. Uh, a well-known painter and businessman, Francis P. Baggy Jr., purchased the property from his father in 1882 and then likely constructed the current house soon after. Baggy Jr. worked in the family business and served as chief of the St. Catharines Fire Department. He resided at 3 Elizabeth Street until 1891. The property remained in the Baggy family for nearly a century, owned by Edward F. Baggy, Mary Baggy, and Irene Crowley, nee Baggy. The house was occupied continuously by the Baggy Crowley family from 1882, circa 1882 to 1968. The Sullivan family, related to the Baggies by marriage, owned the neighboring house at 5 Elizabeth Street for almost 80 years as well. In 1972, the property was sold out of the family to George Suba, a local contractor and community volunteer. Subsequent owners included the Sauve, White, Floyd, and Averill families, with the house undergoing several mortgages, transfers, and power of sale through that time. The Baggy House is historically linked to several prominent early families and civic leaders of St. Catharines and reflects the 19th century subdivision patterns and local trades in the city's urban growth. And so I think this one, it has a lot of support for historical and associative value due to its long-standing ties with the Baggy family. Any questions, comments, concerns, things to add? Interesting bits.
The only, sorry.
You go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say the only real tangible connection to, or one of them, with the Baggy family are the what we call the ghost signs that emerged when they demolished Beatty's old stationery store on St. Paul Street. And both of the painted advertising signs on the brick walls were done by Baggy or Beggy. And actually, the one of them is actually signed F. Beggy at the bottom corner. So that's a nice little, kind of tie into this house and the popular work that the family did in painting, decorating, street signage, you name it.
Yeah, as a trade, I find the sign painters absolutely fascinating. There's their skill and what they used to do, and I know that there's a little bit of resurgence in people learning it as a trade because people love the quality of it, and when they find an old sign like that, they want to protect it, and they say, "Oh, I want that for my building." So, yeah, Andrew.
I would say one of the interesting things about this house is given the nature of the work the family did in terms of interior finishing, plaster work, painting, papering, and so on. It would be really interesting to, cooperate with the owners and maybe document what may be remaining inside, because they did work on a lot of very significant properties and significant families' properties, including Rodman Hall. And if there's plaster or original plaster work in there, I'm not advocating necessarily an interior designation, but being aware of it and documenting it would be great to include in the documentation on the property if it gets to that point.
Yeah. There's one like 906 criteria that talks about something having the potential to yield information that would be valuable to the history of the city. And it's something that's really hard to actually use and really hard to actually assess. But in this case, like knowing that, there's potentially, because of the nature of the people who own the building, there are potentially very curious, layers of history there. That's something to consider for sure. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Any reflections on the potential value of this building going into the evaluation of it? Okay. And so the third building that we're making progress on completing evaluation for is 15 Welland Avenue, and this is the property that Nishida is working on. And in the meantime, Nishida has put together a draft architectural description and is working on some edits to that. And we're going to be working on land use histories, which Brian, I might reach out to you as we start to work on that next in the upcoming week, as well as the contextual. And Nishida will be with us as a student until the end of April. And so our plan is for Nishida to do a little presentation of her findings at the upcoming April meeting. And then we can take that information and complete the 906 evaluation, or even do it together, as a part of moving forward on the property, and also, helping to Nishida to understand, heritage designation from this perspective. I think that would be very useful for everyone. And so that's our plan for this property. Just to go over a few of the highlights of the architectural description for this property. It's a 3-story Second Empire style structure constructed in orange red brick with a prominent mansard roof, which is very characteristic of this style. The front elevation is highly symmetrical and features a central projecting tower, adding vertical emphasis and drawing comparisons to some Italian villa styles as well. The tower includes some neoclassical tabulature at the roofline, and with the continuation of that mansard roof on the tower, and enhanced by white trim at both the upper and lower levels. It has an ornate cornice with decorative brackets and elaborate frieze that runs underneath the eaves, emphasizing the decorative character of the building. The roofline includes multiple gabled dormers, each with windows, adding to the complexity and rhythm of the facade. First and second story windows are arched with rectangular bases framed by brick voussoirs and stone keystones. The entryway has been modernized with plate glass and metal doors, contrasting with the original architectural features. The east and west elevations are simpler and symmetrical, with modest detailing, rectangular windows, and there are 2 chimneys on each side. A side door with white gables, recessed windows, and dormers on the 3rd floor maintain its overall style. The rear elevations reflect similar patterns. The building is set back from the street, framed and by landscaped front grounds featuring paved stone, interlocking trees and shrubs. Oh, I just gotta fix this here. Contributing to its visual presence. So anyone have any comments, questions, reflections on 15 Welland and its maybe architectural value?
I've often wondered with this house, just kind of looking at the structure of it, if it wasn't intended at some point to maybe start out life as a kind of a Tuscan villa kind of house, and then maybe the roof line was altered in the late 1870s, early 1880s to be more this Second Empire style. But I've often thought, it almost looks like it could have walked out of a Tuscan villa kind of plan book. But
yeah,
it's a beautiful house.
Yeah, it is gorgeous, and that's something that we could also look into when we look into the land use history and start digging into it, because it does have hallmarks of both styles, and I'd be curious to see how it evolved over time. Yeah. It is gorgeous. I think one of the very obvious, yes, there's architectural value in this one. It is a stunning building. Anyone else? Well, thank you, Nishida, for helping out with the architectural description for this one. And we look forward to continuing our research into this building. So that is everything for this item so far. Yep. So if anyone has thinks of anything or has any things to contribute, or if something comes up in the next month or so, as I'm putting together the 906 evaluations, I'm always interested in people's perspectives. And when I do put together the evaluation, I'll present them to everybody, and then we can kind of have a little conversation about each, whether or not we agree, and if there's anything that I missed as well. Okay.
That's great, thank you. Are you going to be able to share this update with us? I kind of find it's handy to have them in my folder when I'm going through things just as reference.
Yeah,
Keep-
yeah, sorry, yes. I'll send out this presentation and to everyone as well, so they can have it in their records. And with my notes, and depending, like, do people have an interest in the full reports that both Andrew and Brian put together? If I could also distribute those and send them around, if people have an interest in that.
I've seen both of those, but I'd be interested in seeing any reports that come
Yeah.
available
Okay.
to read for out of
Yeah.
interest. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can also package those up and send them around to everybody as well.
Okay, good. So I guess we need a motion to receive the presentation. I'm going to make that motion. Moved by Mark, with the discussion regarding the ongoing research on upcoming deadlines regarding the St. Paul Crescent properties, 3 Elizabeth Street and 15 Welland Avenue be received. In favor? And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to talk about next steps. And again, Lauren's going to walk us through that.
Yeah. This meeting, I saved next steps for next steps. So as we kind of head towards the April and May meetings and make some decisions around these properties, I think it's probably a good idea to start looking forward to the next properties that we might start getting to work on. We have identified a couple. There's one Welland, which I know there's a lot of concern about, both from a potential development. Not that there's anything there, but there's the potential of the site, and the interest in the history and architecture of the building itself. 219 Merritt Street, 38 Geneva, 2 Queenston, and 260 Vine. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of talk about kind of moving forward. I know, Brian, you had an interest in doing some research for some of these properties. Robert, photos. The Mark potentially doing a land use history for 219, or starting putting together some of that research. So I thought maybe we can go around and kind of talk about goals for April and May for these properties. Does anyone have the capacity, Mark?
Yeah, I just want to talk about 219 Merritt just for a minute. When I did some research on it last year, I found a lot about the Riordan paper mill. And then when I did some further research, I realized that wasn't the original Riordan paper mill. That the original one was Lock 6. And then they built the second building, the sulfite mill, by Lock 18, which that's what this would be, this place. But I did some boots on the ground work as well. And I think everybody knows Sun Collision used to be in this place. They still own it. They're across the street. But when I talk to them, they say that they only own 217, so the higher part. But then the tenant on the right side, 219, says that Sun Collision does own that side too. So I'm not, I wanted to get some history in what it was being used for right now, like inside, because it looks like it's only the addition in the front that's being used, but I have no idea what's going on in the back.
Well, I can do some looking on land to see what like the public record says about who owns each and how that's divided up, and maybe that can help with your search to understand the property and you see who, but even what's there now. I don't know if that would help you. I could definitely do that kind of search for you.
Yeah, the one side here is like a tinting shop. So where you see the garage at the bottom of 217.
Down
Now,
here.
is 217 part of 219? Is that what we're looking at, or is it just, are we only going to be focusing on the 219 part?
I think it's worth looking at both, especially
Okay.
if they have a linked history. And I think, I doubt we'll come to the conclusion that if like one has significance that the other doesn't, but it's possible. And I think it's worthwhile looking at both and considering both if they have a joint history or if it's a separate history.
Right.
But considering they're tied, it's kind of like with 38 Geneva and 2 Queenston,
Exactly.
where like they are technically two separate properties and they do have different histories, but they're linked in significant ways. And it would be worthwhile researching both because first of all, it'd be difficult to separate the two. And second of all, it's likely they have a shared history and a shared significance.
I believe so as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you looked at the city directories, Mark?
In special collections?
Yeah.
No, I have not yet.
Yeah, because we've got those down to 2014, I think. So you can get fairly close to the modern times within the last 10 years or so of what was being done in this building.
Right.
So that might be worth looking at.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I can, if you haven't done the land use history, I mean, I can certainly give you a hand with that.
Okay, that'd be great, Brian. Thanks.
That's great.
And let me know if you're going to be in special collections. I can meet you there as well.
Yeah, I
Unless
don't know
you
when
do it
I'm
all
next going
online
to
on
be
your
in there.
computer.
All right, sounds great. Okay, anyone else want to talk about any particular property or have any questions? Andrew?
Yeah, I had one Welland Avenue on my to-do list, and I've sort of started with that. So if you want to put me as assigned on that one, I'm happy to take that.
Okay. Okay.
And I had sort of started doing research on the 38 Geneva, 2 Queenston, and 260 Vine. So hopefully I'll have those, one or the other, or both of them, ready to go for next meeting.
Okay. So, okay, great. Yeah, and I think as long as things are kind of in motion and things are coming together for either April or for May, I think that having that little tiny bit of progress and pushing it forward a little bit every month, we'll just keep going. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it for me for next steps. Anyone else have anything to add? Or?
Okay. And we don't need a motion for this, or do we? No.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I don't even know if we need a motion for the first one, honestly.
I just follow the script.
Yeah.
So business arising from the minutes, I believe there is none. And no items of correspondence, correct? Okay, so that takes us to the all-important date of the next meeting, which is April 11th, 2025. So it's going to come around quickly. And other than that, in the words of one Brian Nari, I think the next order of business is to terminate. So do we have a motion to terminate? Brian, I think. Moved by Brian that the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designations Subcommittee meeting be adjourned at 3:05 p.m. In favor?
I'll make that motion.
I'll say that was seconded by
Holly.
Jesse.
Holly.
Okay.
There are two Hollies right now.
I was having some technical difficulties, so I had it. I listened to the whole meeting, and I just wanted to also ask James Nielsen about his meeting on the Wednesday at the Market Square. So that's 5 o'clock. Where's
Yeah, so through the chair, I guess we're still technically in a meeting. So through the chair, the Heritage District study was released earlier this week for the downtown. There's a PIC, Public Information Center, which is essentially another way of saying a public meeting, on Wednesday night. Its doors will open at 5. Meeting will start at 5:30. Is at the Market Square, right behind City Hall, right beside the old courthouse. It'll be an opportunity for our consultants to do a presentation to everybody about the findings and the recommendations. It's a very long report. It's about 200 plus pages. I think it's at 250 or something like that. So we don't expect everybody to have been able to digest everything quickly. But that's kind of the point of doing this session, is to kind of give the people the information up front rather than having them have to do a lot of homework themselves. So at that meeting, there'll be a chance for everybody to learn more about the project, what the recommendations are, and then there will be a Q&A afterwards. And then we'll also open up on our Engage STC page. There will be a survey, essentially, just looking for feedback on people on the recommendations and people's thoughts on the study, and if they spot any typos or whatever you want to throw at us. Basically, we will take your feedback and forward it to our consultants. So please feel free to come out Wednesday night. We expect that there will be a big turnout, but it's always good to have heritage-friendly people in the crowd as well. So that's about it. Holly, does that answer all your questions?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you very much. I will be in attendance.
Great.
The report that's being presented, is that like still a draft copy, or is it like a final?
It's still a draft.
Okay.
So the point of it is to kind of get feedback from people. There might be, even though we did a PIC almost a year ago and received feedback then, this is just another chance for people to offer their feedback, and we can still kind of make tweaks to the report. Largely, the report is probably about 99% complete. But there's going to be different things that pop up, little errors here and there. It's a huge report, so it doesn't take much for, a few things to pop up here and there. But yeah, there's still opportunities for people to chime in, and we can incorporate the feedback.
So we'll eventually be getting copies of the report?
I think I circulated it to the Heritage Committee earlier this week.
No, but I mean, like the
forward it
final.
to you again, Brian?
No, but I mean, when we get a final version, will we get that as well?
Yeah, we'll post that again, and I'll make sure that everybody is circulated on it. Once it's posted, once it's final, though, I don't think we'd be making any changes to it unless there was some sort of glaring kind of omission or error. But I think at that point, that's the report that would go to council. And yeah, so.
Is there a tentative date when it's going to go to council, or is that to be determined still?
Probably in May, but don't have that hammered down. We haven't put it on an agenda quite yet, but yeah, it'll probably be in May.
So likely the May council meeting. If not, then probably the June.
I don't think we want to go much later than that, because depending on how council, and actually that's a good thing to bring up for this group, because depending on what council decides, if they say, no, we don't want a heritage district, and now we have 100 downtown properties that potentially need individual designations. Yep, no, I feel for you, Andrew. You kind of, in a way, took the words out of my mouth with your actions. We will have to figure out if this group kind of pivots and maybe helps out with that. We'll also, we don't know what kind of resources we'll get after this. If we can use some of the money that was allocated to the HCD project towards, maybe bringing in another staff member or bringing in consultants to help. It's harder with individual properties because they're time consuming, right? To do the work. And typically for a consultant to take on even one property, you're looking at around $5,000 maybe per property. And so you do 100 properties, that adds up quick, and it far exceeds the money that we were given for this downtown heritage district study. So we'll see. We'll see what council says. Obviously, I'll make my best pitch that I think the project is worth supporting, but you just never know how that's going to land. So, but yeah, we'll definitely know more by probably the time of. I guess when this group meets in June, we should have a better direction or a better idea of whether or not we're going to need support here for that project. So,
And it seems that getting people, all of us getting who we know to weigh in is important because we want to make sure that the quieter majority is heard, not just the louder minority. And it seems that the numbers tilt towards positive reaction, but the conversation is maybe not reflecting that balance.
yeah, that's my take as well. And I don't know if you've seen the survey data that we put up on our Engage page, but the results were large, especially of our first survey, were largely really positive, even amongst property and downtown business owners. It was a majority of people were like, yeah, we think heritage is really important and really want to see it preserved. It was the second round of surveys where there was a little more of like a concerted effort, I guess you could say, or organized effort from people who were more opposed, where you start to see kind of cracks in that. To me, both surveys are valid. We wanted to understand from people that were concerned, what are your concerns, right? And that was the point of the second survey. So yeah, but usually people who are in favor of something aren't gonna, call every counselor and let them know that they are in favor of something, right? So if we have people who are in attendance who are able to also speak in favor of it, then great, right? It certainly doesn't hurt at all. So yeah, I don't want to put anybody, force anybody to come out or anything like that. But if you feel like coming out and want to say something, then by all means, you're more than welcome. Robert?
Can we get a specific heads up when this is coming to council?
Oh yeah,
So
for sure.
sure.
I will make sure that everybody's aware of when it's coming.
Okay.
I just don't want to. I mean, behind the like, I kind of have an idea of what the date will be, but we haven't made that public yet or anything. And so I can't really let everybody know because all it takes is something to go slightly sideways, and maybe we push it.
That's fair. I just don't want to miss it simply for an oversight.
No, I will definitely make sure. And I'll actually also, you might already know this because I think Lauren sent out the agenda for next week's Heritage Committee meeting, but the consultants for this project are coming to the Heritage Committee meeting next week to get the Heritage Committee's endorsement. So they'll be there to walk you through it all and talk about the project and take your questions and everything as well.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
Thank you, James.
We'll get some reading to do before then.
You have some reading to do, or you can just sit back and listen to them because they're going to provide you with a lot of information. But I know Brian in particular has helped quite a bit with the history section. He provided some really great feedback, and our Adrian and Kathleen from the museum, they provided a lot of feedback. So there's a lot of it. It's a pretty great kind of report, but yeah, don't feel like you need to read all 250 pages. It's not not super important. You could read the executive summary and read the recommendations if you want, or look at the nice pictures. Whatever you want, you will get all the information next Thursday as well from our consultants.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Well, hopefully it'll pass, when the time comes, because if we have to start doing, 100+ properties, researching them individually, that's going to be a huge amount of time to do that.
Yeah, and that's what I'll be making clear in my report to council as well, right? Is to make sure that it's understood that if this doesn't pass and we have to pivot to a different strategy, the trying to do individual designations is very onerous, and it's really not feasible to do it in even a decent timeline, right? Like think about how long it takes to do research on one property and times it by 100, and then think about where that puts us on the calendar. You're looking at what, a 5-7 year project, right? Like that's a long way. That's a long way out. A lot can happen in that amount of time. So that's kind of an argument that I'll be making as well, is that the Heritage District study is the most efficient route. If we want to protect our heritage. So
because even the the report that I did for you know, the 143 to 147 St. Paul, I think that took me about all the time I put into it was probably about 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
you know, combined.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you're especially on our end, so you're looking at 3 to 4 days of, let's say, research. And Lauren and I've and Brian, like when we've worked at ASI, we've put together these reports, and we kind of have an idea of how long it takes to, if you're just dedicated to that and doing nothing else,
Yeah.
you know, you can probably do 3 or 4 days worth of work. But Lauren also has other things she needs to do at City Hall and part of her job. So it's really challenging without somebody really dedicated to that work. And yeah, it's when you start doing the math on how many days and how many hours it requires, it adds up quick. And then you have to also factor in, we have to write staff reports, we have to send out notices, we have to talk to owners, we have to, there's a lot that goes into it. And then there's, you know, people can challenge it at the OLT. And so now all of a sudden you're having to go to the OLT and prep for that. It's a
Every
lot.
single
It's
one.
a lot. So yeah, fingers crossed.
this is sort of off topic, but is there any word on what's happening with the Lock Street property at this point?
Oh, 33 Lock? No, we haven't heard anything. They had until there's an appeal period essentially. And I'm not sure what date exactly the notice went out for what the council decision was, because council obviously voted against the demolition. So the owner has the right to appeal that decision if they'd like, and to appeal the planning application. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if our planners have heard anything. If they had, they probably would have let me know. But the deadline is probably not too far off. So we'll know pretty quickly, I think. And if I have an update by next week, then I'll let you know at the Heritage Committee meeting.
Okay. I believe our motion is still on the table to terminate. Moved by Brian and Holly. In favor? All right, then the motion carries. We are now adjourned, terminated until April. Thanks, everybody.
To everyone.
Thank you.
And
Good to see
thank
everybody.
you all for
Thanks.
all of your work, and thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Laura.
Yep.
Have a
See
great
you later.
weekend.
See you next